Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about what?
I believe we are talking about good RPGs for beginners.
Okay.
Now, some of these we've talked about in depth in other episodes. So, but they're still, I think these are really good, solid entries into being able to play with beginners with no problems. A little short explanation of how the game mechanics work. Dice are explained. Characters can be made. And bada bing, bada boom, you're playing.
I totally disagree with him, but that's okay.
What? That's ridiculous. Anyway, so my first game that I posited to you is Liminal RPG. Liminal is urban fantasy, which is kind of super hot, super popular for the last, 20 years? since let's say shows like, was it Supernatural have been out? It's been out a while. I think they ended, but it was like a, 10, 12-year run?
Popular for some of us since we read Charles DeLint in the 90s.
Well, okay. And then, of course, there's the popular Dresden Files and stuff like that. So urban fantasy has been around for a while, and there's been shows. Dresden Files had a year show, and then now there's all kinds of urban fantasies on Netflix. And I don't know about mainstream television, but I was just thinking of like...
well, there was always Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff.
Right, and Supernatural, which was on regular television, I guess. Then there's other stuff that's a little bit more, maybe not so well known, like Winx the Saga, which I started watching a little while ago.
A lot newer.
Yeah, I'm just saying this very new stuff and very old stuff. Well, not old, but older. But anyway, so Liminal is a urban fantasy set in England. So I don't know how I got looked into. It came across my field of vision, and I bought it. And it's actually a really neat little system and neat little book. And there's all kinds of supplements for it now. Not all kinds of supplements. It's a couple of supplements. But what I really like is they put out these little things they called case notes, which for most people would be adventures. And there's
it's called case notes because it's a mystery game, really.
Oh, right. That's true. So I understand why they're called case notes, but
I just wanted to make sure.
For most people, they're like small adventures. I really liked them. I thought they gave you enough meat on the bone to run the adventure, or if you wanted to expand on it and stuff like that.
And you say the system is easy for beginners because?
Well, it uses a modified... Well, it uses a 2D6 system, which is popular by Traveller. And I don't know what happened somewhere in the history of the gaming. They realized that you cannot copyright a game mechanic. So literally you can use D&D's 5th edition rules mechanic, or the mechanic, and copy it, and you won't be under copyright infringement. Now,
you only mean the mechanic of rolling a certain kind of dice.
Right, and adding or subtracting. Well, in this case, with advantage or not. Well, I don't know advantage. Advantage is a word. So anyway, so once that kind of happened, and maybe there was a open gaming license was enacted. But anyway, it uses a 2D6 system, which is really simple. You use 2D6 and you go over a target number. Usually that target number is 8. And you add, subtract number points.
For your attributes.
For attributes or skills that you have, or special talents. And I think it's super easy. And I really liked it. And even though I've said in the past that I didn't like Traveller, there was a couple of things I didn't like about Traveller. One was I found it a little bit boring, their world, their rules. And two, I thought the mechanic was really too simple.
I thought that we were talking about easy games for new players, and Traveller is not one of them.
Well, no, you're right. I think a lot of it is just archaic language in Traveller, in the original rules. It just, remember we were trying to make a character or whatever?
Oh, yeah, I do remember.
Right. Well, all that has changed because the creator of this game actually changed all the wording and stuff. So he words it. Paul Mitchner is the creator or the author of Liminal.
Yes.
I'll make sure I got that name right. And he went through the book. He went through the rules of Traveler and changed them and simplified things. And then when he explains the rules in his book, it seems just to make more sense to me, and it's easier for me to make more sense of it.
I don't remember him saying that he went through the rules of Traveler and changed them. This is just in your head.
No, he didn't go through the rules of Traveler. What he did is he took the mechanic and that archaic speak of how to explain of how you use it, and came up with his own way of explaining the rule mechanic, or his new rule mechanic of the 2d6 system.
I think that's a better explanation.
And then for me, when I read his explanations and stuff on how the game is run and how the mechanic works, to me it's much more. It makes more sense than the Traveler.
There you go.
Yes. So that out of the way. So characters are really easy to make. There's these templates you can use, and I think the characters are really easy to make. They're not a bunch of stats that you have in other games, and all it is stats, and then you have a couple of skills or a few skills, and then some characters have talents or special abilities. And those are easily explained, and it's really simple. I really like it, and like I said, the way you can make a character is, like I said, is really easy to make. I think you could always, like for a convention or something, you could probably have pre-made characters, which would even make it even easier.
Well, and I would always suggest that if you're running for brand new people, character creation is something that you may not want to do on the first game. You might want to just have the characters like pre-made or mostly pre-made, so that they don't have to go through the whole mechanic. Because it might even be too daunting for someone to sit down and go, "Oh, I have to create a person to play."
I think for the most part, if you're playing with brand new people and it's not like the start of a campaign, right? This is just like an introduction to RPGs, maybe for those people. I think the best thing to do is to hand them pre-made characters or pre-generated characters. When I ran you guys through games, did you guys have pre-made characters? No, you guys made characters, I thought.
What games? Liminal? You weren't playing with new people, dude.
That's true.
I believe that Bay and Morgan could have picked any character that was. I think we just picked templates and.
I think you did.
And went with it.
Yeah. What's the whole thing behind Liminal? You are a group of people who are usually somehow. Oh, okay, let me tell you the background of Liminal. So the basic concept of Liminal is that you are investigators into the strange world of the mythic England, and only certain people can have experience with that world. And once you have contact with that world, then you kind of see it again and again. And you are usually a group of strange characters that could be a werewolf, you could be a changeling, or you could just be a normal person that was exposed to the Fae world as it is, and people come to you to investigate things that normal police wouldn't do. So that's it. That's the basic premise of the game, and you go on these investigative or mysteries, and you solve the mystery. And so when I said that they have case notes, they have these little adventures that are pretty easy to read, and they give you enough information to run a game, and it's pretty neat.
I would only suggest that you make sure the people you're going to play with like mysteries.
You're right. Yeah.
Because I'm not sure that Liminal is a game for brand new players that are waiting to do hack and slash or think that this is what's going to happen.
That's how you solve a problem.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm just saying because.
Oh, you explained that, I think, and I think most people will understand that, especially like if they're brand new to role playing. The idea of hack and slash isn't probably foremost in their mind. I mean, I don't know.
It's hard to say now what they've been exposed to.
That's true. There's so many things that people have been exposed to as far as RPGs and stuff. And again, what I like about it is the system is really simple. It's 2d6, and 6-sided dice doesn't like make people go, "What the heck is that?" When they, instead of a 20-sided die and a 4-sided, everybody knows what a 6-sided die is.
I totally disagree. I think that if you hand them polyhedrel dice they're going to fall in love and never leave.
Well, there's that, but some people are like, "What's that?" I mean, it just makes it more foreign. Where if you bust out the 6-sided dice, it's something they know. It's something from Monopoly.
There's 6-sided dice in D&D.
I'm not very ready.
I'm just saying.
Okay, so did you want to say anything else about Liminal?
It's a good game.
Yes.
I would. I'm not sure that I agree with Saul that it's for beginners, because I might feel uncomfortable, or not uncomfortable. I might feel nervous about trying to run a mystery game for beginners. Maybe in one way it would be really cool, but in another way, because mystery games are harder to me, because you never know what the players are going to think, and the clues have to really you have to really make sure that they get them so that they can follow the way that they should to figure out the mystery. Although I guess it would be, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about mystery games for beginners, but.
Okay. Yeah. I understand. Right. Well, my next game for beginners is Tales from the Loop, which is also a mystery game where you solve mysteries and investigate, but as children in the 80s. It never was. So I really like this game. Again, the concepts are pretty easy because you use 6-sided dice. Hey, another 6-sided die game. There's no strange polyhedrels.
Do all of the games that you are suggesting only have 6-sided?
You know what? I didn't think about it, but you're right. I just realized that they all do use 6-sided dice. And I've said it before, and I've done it twice now at two game conventions. Tales from the Loop is the only game I've ever gone to a convention and have the people who are playing the game make the characters right there on the spot. This time it took a little bit longer. Took like 20 minutes, 25. And the players there was 3 adults, if I include Steve, and
it's always hard to include
and 4
Steve
young
as an
people. And we talked about that. I talked about that in a previous episode of, I'm not sure how old they were, but they made characters and they were off and running. And they had the younger people, and I'm saying the average age was maybe 19 to 20. Who knows what they really were. But anyway, we'll say 15 to 25. That covers a good range. And they had only played Pathfinder Society, which I thought was kind of strange. Parents had the dad, they were with their dads, and they were experienced. They had played a few other games, but mainly they had played Pathfinder.
Okay.
Tales from the Loop is playing in the 80s that never was. There's a super easy mechanic. You get your, I've explained it before, but you get your attribute, you add your skill. That's your dice pool of 6-sided dice. You roll all those 6-sided dice, however that may be. Usually the skills and the attributes are ranged between 1 and 5. So you could have you could have an attribute of 1 and a skill of 0, and you would roll 1 die. And then up to if you have 5 and 5, up to 10 dice. Maybe even 12 if you have your special item. And you roll that many dice, and if you roll a 6, boom, you succeed. If you roll any more than that, you succeed with a little bit of extra whatever. If you're running a race, you
win.
You win, but then you win with like maybe a faster time than you would normally. And stuff like that. It's super easy. You're solving a mystery, they call it.
So it is a little different than just the 2D6 system, which the 2D6 system is pretty cool because you just have to get one number over a certain amount or under a certain amount.
Over.
Okay. But the dice pool is kind of cool for...
Well, you get a handful of dice sometimes.
It's really hard to get a 6 sometimes in those handfuls of dice.
When
you really need it.
When the dice gods say no 6s, it means no 6s.
That's when I want polyhedral dice.
Well, that did happen. This one kid, this young person, he had a skill of 7, so he rolled 14 dice and all because you could push. If you roll all your dice and you still fail, you could call it a push. You could do a push, and you collect all those dice and you roll again. And
hopefully you make a 6.
And if you don't get a 6, then you suffer a condition that causes you to a little bit of obstacles.
The only thing I disagree with you on about Tales of the Loop being for beginners is that if you're playing with young like teenagers,
okay,
it's probably not the game for them because they're still teenagers. So the idea of being a teenager in the 80s isn't going to mean a whole lot to them, right? Or the idea of it might be a little bit harder as a new game for teenagers, where if they're in their 30s or 40s, then you harken back to your days in high school.
The nostalgia kicks in. I think you are correct in a certain sense, because you have to be removed from high school, from that year a bit, to be able to look back and go, oh yeah, have this
to appreciate or disdain it.
Yeah. However people look back on their young early education, and remember, they're not in high school. They could be in high school.
I know. I'm just saying
the characters range from 10 to 15.
I'm just saying that for me, I find that a harder game. I was surprised when you picked it for new players, because a lot of times new players are younger. So that's my only drawback for that one for new players.
Yes.
Because if you're a teenager, playing a 10-year-old is not a big thrill, right?
Right.
Or playing a 16-year-old is not.
Well, no,
if you're
15. 16. The hard limit is 15.
It's fine. 15.
The young people that I played with didn't seem to have a problem.
Steve was probably right. They were probably in their 20s.
I can't believe you're agreeing with Steve. So I still think it's a good game. You're right. Having really young players, let's say, but I don't know, maybe they would like to play in a world like their own that's just a little bit different.
Yeah, maybe, but I'm going to go with no.
Another thing you have to. Another thing I realized right now is about the time period of both these games is that they're both modern games, sort of. And so you don't have to explain to them or describe to them certain features of the world. They already know it.
Right.
Except for the young people in this group that I played with this last time. They kept trying to bust out their cell phone. In the 80s, there was no cell phone. They're like, really? I'm like, no, really?
You see what I'm saying?
Right. But then they were like in awe, like, how did you guys do stuff? Right? And they go, how would you go? I go, you would go to a telephone booth. And they're
What's
like,
that?
Booth? I thought it was eye opening, and then
they may not have seen a telephone booth. They might not know what a payphone is, but remember they stopped using the telephone booths and they just hung the payphones on the wall.
Right, like on a pedestal. There was I remember they were all over the place in like, what is it, like 7-Elevens and stuff. Yeah, telephone booths really started leaving probably in the late 70s, right?
Yeah, because I think there were still some in the 80s, but not very many.
Yeah, the whole little box thing would close the door.
Yeah.
That's so weird that they would have that little booth for privacy. That was
for privacy, yeah.
Yeah, how strange.
Because it's kind of loud outside if you're talking to.
Yeah.
Anyway, off subject. I'm just saying that's what I mean by playing with younger people, that particular game.
So you're right. I think some younger people may not have the distance away from high school to appreciate going back. But I don't know, these young people, I don't want to use kids, but
well, they were probably in their early 20s, and it was I'm not saying that that some of them wouldn't. I'm just saying I'm thinking about Augustine, and he's 18, almost 19. And the idea him and Alan might not really want to do that, right? They would be going, why am I going to play a teenager? Because they're still teenagers, right?
Right.
That's just my thought about new players. On that game. But is it Free League that does that game?
Yes.
So, but Free League has a lot of other games, different genre games that use the same kind of acting
mechanic.
Well,
Aliens. Coriolis, which is a space game.
So I'm saying you could use those kind of games. Might be a little more
to liking it for teenagers.
For teenagers.
Yeah.
Especially Alien, I can see. Although. Because teenagers are into horror. A lot of people are into horror, right? And Alien is like a icon of horror.
Oh yeah. And in fact, I remember, I don't know how old they were, but they were watching the Alien, the first movie.
The boys,
no? Yeah,
they were like 13, 14.
Yeah, was it that old?
Maybe 12.
12.
I remember they really, really wanted to watch it because we found that big Aliens.
I'm like, no, you shouldn't watch it because it's rated R movie, and I know people don't care about rating sometimes.
It wasn't the rated R part that I think that was getting to you. I think it was the gory part,
the bursting of the chest.
Yeah.
Well, that's the rated R part. I hate to tell you.
And we were watching at Steve and Kathy's house,
yes.
And I just remember Augustine and Alan, just the look on their face when they the horror of seeing that.
I didn't even see the church burster come out. Just that guy was screaming and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think
Augustine ran out of the room.
Yeah.
I mean, but they were like young. So
I think they were younger than they're more like 12 than later teens. Anyway, it's a rated R movie. It was rated.
Well, it's a traumatic movie. I don't even like. I'm like, you don't want to watch this. This is not something you want to watch.
Yeah, and I was like, why are you guys watching this movie?
And they wanted to see it though. They wanted to see it. And Kathy's like, they want to see it. Come on, it's okay.
Well, that's the first mistake. Listening to those people about ratings, they could care less.
They'll be fine. And
they won't be fine because
they were both a little traumatized.
I think Alan even had nightmares for like a couple weeks.
Well, I think that was a different movie. That was Aliens in the Attic that scared him. Those little aliens really scared him.
And that was rated G.
Otra vez.
You don't think Tales from the Loop is good for beginners, but...
No, I'm not saying it's not
kids.
good for beginners. I'm just saying for teenagers. Yeah. You might want to pick one of the other genres with that kind of adding to mechanic dice pool system.
What is weird is that I run both those games, Tales from the Loop and Liminal. I haven't run both of them at cons and privately, but Tales from the Loop I run at private games and at the con. And I hadn't even thought about young people playing in the Tales from the Loop game
until they showed up.
Well, until they showed up,
you didn't even really think. And
I didn't
even
think about it. I go, okay, this is the way it's going to be. But because I thought it was very interesting that the concepts of the 80s for them, it seemed like for them it was such a long time ago, and yet
they weren't alive, so it was a long time.
It was a long time ago, but at the same time, they didn't realize certain things didn't exist. Like the cell phone was a big deal.
But now that Stranger Things has come out, that is from the 80s, right?
Yes.
Stranger Things, and you see a lot of the iconic stuff. Although I don't know about phone booths and stuff like that.
I mean,
but they're running. That is
landline.
A depiction of a small town, right, kind of thing, in the 80s.
Yes, you are correct. Somewhere I don't know what it's based on, but I like the time period because it's right before the burgeoning technological boom, and you still had personal computers, but they were like really expensive, right? Not everybody had one. I mean, I think the first personal computer I saw, other than the Apple IIe, which I didn't see in people's houses until, one of my friends had one. He had Apple.
We had one from 1983. Not an Apple, though. It was a TSR.
That doesn't count as a computer. The Trash 80 was not.
Oh, my brother was pretty good with it. I could program it, and he was a geeky
nerd.
programmer.
He was a total nerd.
I had to help him with that code.
If you're a Trash 80 owner and actually were able to do stuff with it, it's because you're a total nerd.
And we had 16, and not 8, but we had the 16. I know it's not gigabytes. 16, what is it?
Kilobytes?
Yes.
Of RAM?
Yes.
Woo! Not the 8, but the 16 kilobytes. Can you imagine what you could do with
And we had a
kilobytes?
Printer. We were the only people.
How the hell did you get at that?
Well, because our friend, Bill Hartsfield, he had one. And so Ricky we were at their house a lot. And he said Ricky really wanted one. So my mom saved up money and got it for him for Christmas. And that was and then we got a printer. So because I remember when we moved to Chico when I was in high school, they said, can you print it out? And they're going, you're going to have to go to the library and blah, blah, blah. And they had these things at the school, right? And I just printed it out at home because my brother helped me.
Wow. No, I didn't. My brother had an Atari ST, which was pretty cool. It had a cassette tape drive. And for the people who are older, will know what a cassette is. But anyway, it was pretty cool. It had a printer. He had a printer with it. I don't know. And it played games, and it had a pretty cool, it had a word processor, which was really cool because we could print out stuff. I didn't use it very much to print stuff because, I don't know, I just didn't. But for the first time that I saw like a real computer, personal computer at home, not a Trash 80, my experience with Trash 80s was not as good as yours, I guess, was my friend, I forgot his name, but Robert. He had a Apple IIe, and he loved that thing, and he had a modem. He had the modem, and he would contact bulletin boards, online bulletin boards, BBS as they were called, and you could chat with people and download pirated games and stuff that took for days to download, and hopefully nobody picked up the phone and used it in that time period. Anyway, so there's a huge difference between 1980s and today, right? And I think, like I said, the biggest problem they had, not the problem, but the biggest shock was about cell phones, because they didn't think about it, and so it made the adventure so much different. Not being able to grab your phone and Google something for one,
Right.
or call somebody, because they're like, oh, that guy's, your friend is at school and you're at home. It'll take you at least 10, 15 minutes to get to where he's at. They're like, I'll just call him. He's not near a phone. And they're like, oh, that's right. There's no cell phones. So it really changes how the mystery is solved. And I think somebody said somewhere, I don't know where I read it or I heard it, but somebody said that most stories in the past, like TV shows and stuff like that, that if they had cell phones, there would be no TV show, because that was the whole part of the show, is that there was a lot of miscommunication. You couldn't get to that person in time to prevent him from doing something. But now you can just call someone and say, hey, don't go into that house, right? Now, whether they listen to you or not, it's totally different, but at least they have a warning and stuff, where in the old days, try them at home and they're leaving the house and they hear the phone ring and they go, I'm not going to answer the phone. And they walk out and then to their doom or something like that. But now...
Okay, now that we've gone on a total...
technological...
some weird place that you went. Tangent.
Anyway, so I really like Tales from the Loop. I've run it twice at conventions. They made characters at conventions. Super easy to make, super easy to explain the rules. I like it.
There you go.
The next one I like is Feng Shui.
Another 2D6 system.
Yes, but it's not quite 2D6, because one's a positive and one's a negative. And you add those numbers together.
And there's exploding dice.
And they do explode. And if you get a negative result or positive result, it's added or subtracted to your total skill. That's how it works.
Feng Shui is pretty easy character creation because it's all just templates.
Right. Now it is. Feng Shui 2 is templates. Feng Shui, the original Feng Shui, had templates, but you had more control about what you picked and what you didn't pick. Like, there was more choices to make. So you worked off a template, and then there was just more choices. In the new one, you only get like 2 choices.
Right. But there's so many different things you can choose.
Right. Which makes making a character really fast.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I like the old version better for me, because you have more control of the character that you're making. But
you just take the template and you make it your own.
Well, I mean, the old rules.
I know. I'm just saying that.
Different.
I'm just saying.
That's just saying. But for speed of getting the people at your table playing, and if they don't have characters, then the new way is just super easy. And there's a ton of archetypes, right?
Right.
There's 50.
That's what they call the templates, as archetypes.
Right.
I think for new players, for Feng Shui, if you're going to run a game for them, for new players, I would suggest that you have a bunch of names set out to give them ideas. Because that's one of the things in Feng Shui, you have to pick the name for your characters. You're a thief. So one of the things is you pick your name, and then you pick what do they call it? Your motivation, like something. A dramatic hook.
Yeah.
So if you have some like written out that you can pass around to people so they can get ideas, or have them like say, here's like 10 dramatic hooks that you could take any kind of version and use, right?
Right.
Because that sometimes for new players might stifle them.
Yeah, stall them.
And names in Feng Shui, because you're in Hong Kong, right? You're doing an action. It's like an action kind of thing, right? So giving them some ideas, right? Of names and plot hooks, or not plot hooks, dramatic hooks, would be easiest to help them get going.
Right. No, I totally agree. That's fine.
Because I've noticed that when you're playing with newer people, those little things that old people who play all the time take for granted, right? And they go, oh, I'm going to make this character. I see this character, and I'm going to use... They just have all these... They come ideas. Up with crazy names in their head, right? But sometimes I'll go, well, what's the name I want to use? And then I'll be stuck there for 10 minutes. And just because you're trying to make the character yours.
Right.
Well, so if you're new, you're like going, I have to come up with a name for this guy. And
Well, I think the dramatic hook is probably even harder. Because,
that one's a lot.
Because what does that mean, right? What's
Yeah.
the dramatic hook? And then so when you give them, like you said, a good, at least 5 examples of
Yeah.
what a dramatic hook is, then they're like, oh, okay, something that really sets your character apart and something that's really means a lot to the character.
Well, and in the Feng Shui 2 book, they have examples of dramatic hooks.
Right.
So you could use some of those.
Yeah, and
but those, it's very helpful to be able to have somebody in front of you saying, oh, here you go. Look at these. These are the kind of dramatic hooks that you're looking for.
Right.
Or you pick one of these, right? Or
Right.
change it however you want.
And unlike the other 2 games that I suggested, this is not necessarily a mystery game, though usually you're solving something, or, obviously in every role-playing game there's a challenge that you have to overcome. But it is an action-orientated game, right?
Yes.
It tries to mimic I consider fantastical Hong Kong theater movies, right? Like whatever, whether it's an action movie or a period piece or kung fu type of martial artist type of movie. It just mixes everything into one bucket, and just you could be any of those different types of characters. And I think it's a lot of fun. I loved running that game. What I like about it is that it's just really exciting to play, because you could do anything you want, because it really bends reality as much as possible.
Because that's what those kind of movies do, right?
Right. And in fact, there's one of the things that says that you could just dodge, right? That's one example. And just say you're dodging. Just, I'm going to move out of the way. Or you could say, for example, what really is Feng Shui like is that as the person is shooting at you, you use the bullets to step on them and climb higher toward the shooter. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty impressive. And I'm like, that's just pretty neat. And that's the kind of stuff that they're shooting for, is this high octane, high action, almost impossible type of things to do in Hong Kong. I mean, it's just this, and then racing down the streets and shooting and hanging and from chandeliers and swinging, and it's just everything is possible in Feng Shui. And I think people really take to that like fish to water. Once they get that concept down, then it gets crazy, which is fun.
So what would you do? So you picked all these games, and they're all 2D or 2D6 or 6 or
There's
dice
6-sided
pools
dice.
for 6-sided dice. What would you do if the new people that you wanted to do are going, I heard about this game called D&D and I want to play it? Then I think that you could, or Pathfinder, right?
Okay, Pathfinder, I probably wouldn't run them through Pathfinder, because it's just too
crunchy.
It's too crunchy for me. Now, I've gotten lazy and don't want to crunch all those numbers or invent all those numbers to crunch. But I think D&D for the most part, it's simple enough that you could run new players through it, especially with the popularity that it has. A lot more people would be interested in D&D to run, and I think that kind of enthusiasm is helpful. I would obviously use pre-generated characters.
Absolutely.
And the starter set, I think that there's an essential set and a starter set. I forget which one's which. One's they say is more useful than the other. But whichever one, I'm sorry, I don't know which one. But one of them, I think it's the starter set, has like pre-made characters in it. They're printed on these nice glossy sheets of paper. And they literally tell you what to roll for what. And where you could just, as a GM, you can just tell them the basic mechanic of how the D20 mechanic works, and then explain to them, what the adventure is about or what it's like, what you can do and what you can't do. Because people think, oh, it's a fantasy game. I'm gonna jump from this hill all the way 2,000 feet to the other hill.
Well, I'm afraid you can't do that.
No, there's still some things in reality, right? There's some, maybe you can
the laws of physics may apply,
right? Maybe you can dimension door that far, but you can't jump that
but
far,
not
right?
as a first level character.
Yeah, probably not as a first level character. But I think I've heard that kind of That set is pretty cool. The adventure, I think the Lost Mines of Faldover or whatever, is supposedly really good. There's certain sections of it that are kind of slow and boring that people don't like about it. Or I would probably come up with my own.
Yeah,
I really would. Something really simple that doesn't take a long time to start to finish, and you could just steal like things from anything, right? A popular one is a caravan thing, you know, caravan. But again, depending on how much time you have and how many players you have, and how well they progress, I would make it a really short adventure.
I would say 4 hours.
Yeah, 4 hours, and that would be a short adventure. And 4 hours passes by really fast, especially if you get into combat, because combat does take a little bit longer in D&D than, let's say, Feng Shui.
And when you are in combat, when you hit somebody with your sword, you get to pick a different die and roll it.
Right. So you're not stuck with the six-sided, boring six-sided dice.
You're not just, and I'm not against six-sided dice. I like them. I'm just saying that, you know, it might hook the people more and make it more exciting.
There was a time where I didn't like six-sided dice games because I thought they were boring. Because I'm like, why should I just use six-sided dice?
There's all these other dice.
There's all these other dice. I love the 12-sider. I love that thing. The 10, the 20, the D4.
You get to throw a magic missile, and a magic missile, and then you get to roll this D4.
Yeah,
right?
cow chop. Don't step on that thing. So I think there's a lot other games that are simple that you can use for new players. The reason I picked these is because I've actually ran them, and I've actually ran them for people who have never played before, and they work, right? They work really well.
You could probably run any game, although I would stay away from the really crunchy ones for very new beginners. If you're really familiar with it and you create the characters and explain it easily, right?
Yeah, there's some games that are not like that, though.
Well, yeah, no, I wouldn't jump into Shadowrun or anything like that.
Shadowrun 5th edition, at least, because that's the one we have experience with. I think maybe the 1st edition, because the 1st edition is these D6 dice pools, and if you kind of like, I don't know, change the rules a little bit or make it just a simpler type of game.
I want to do it.
You could probably do it that way, but I don't know. The 5th edition rules is really a mind bender. Then there's other games that mimic that cyberpunk magic setting.
I would say if you have new players, whatever genre they like, you could probably like pick a game to go with it. And if they want to play D&D, which a lot of people these days do, because they see it and or they've heard about it or their friends are playing it, do a simple adventure and let them learn it, and then say, "There's these other games too. Let's try this one."
Right. Yes, I wouldn't mind running D&D for beginners, 5th edition anyway, and but I would definitely, like I said, run a real simple game, have pre-made characters, and I wouldn't just like if you're having 4 players, I wouldn't just make 4 characters. I would make 8 characters. I would make 8 characters, so people have a real amount of what is it?
And a lot of times, I'm choice. A lot of times,
to make.
I would say that, you know, if it's new people, it's always good to have somebody who already knows how to play the game play with the party.
That's helpful, yes.
And that way, you know, they can see somebody doing an actual role playing, right? Versus
yes. Yeah, it's
because
helpful.
It's hard to. I don't know. That's just my idea.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they're a good role player and they role play a lot, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's like." But you don't want to show up the new players either, so like intimidate them by, I'm speaking in Elizabethan accent.
So pick the person wisely.
Yes, good idea. Anyway, so there's a lot of games you can go out there and pick for new players to run. I just picked these because they're just the first ones that came to mind, and I think they're pretty exciting games. I think they come. There's more to role playing than just hack and slash games, and that's probably another reason why I picked these. Because I know 2 of them are mysteries and one of them is action Hong Kong theater.
Yeah, which RPG. Is going to be hack and slash, sort of.
Hack and slash, but you could also have a lot of mysteries.
Mooks to kill.
Yeah, you could go through mooks, yes, and it's it's like I said, it's a classic. I think almost everybody's seen one of these type of movies, like
anything with Jackie Chan
or Jet Li.
Michelle Yao.
Yao. And then from there, you got Chow Yun-fat.
Yes.
And though some of his movies, like the Replacement Killers, is basically grounded on the reality. the action sequences and the gonzo gun shooting is very reminiscent of the action Hong Kong theater movies that Feng Shui tries to emulate.
Yes.
So take your pick, get a game, and run from somebody new who wants to get into RPGs, because it's a pretty fun hobby.
There you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.